Okay, so I'm Sarah Honeychurch from the University of Glasgow, and I'm here to present some research that my friends, Aris Boskert, Len Singh and AK have done with me. We have been looking at lurkers in an online community called CLMOOC, which is a connected learning MOOC and community that's been going since 2012. And last year we captured all of the tweets and did some social network analysis on them. So we started by looking at the different types of participants in a MOOC. So you get active participants, passive, drop-ins, lurkers and no-shows. By a lurker we mean somebody who has actually had a little bit of engagement with the course. I think we defined it as having tweeted at least 5 times. This is Aris's slide that I don't understand too much, but he put in without telling me. Aris says that there are different types of layers in a network. So you can go from an active to a no-show, tacit knowledge to explicit knowledge. And Aris's idea is as you get further towards the centre, then you start to, if you're an active participant, you're using your tacit knowledge, you're part of the core group, and you're an expert learner. So, why do people lurk in online communities? We thought before we started it might be a lack of confidence, it might be a lack of competence, but it might be something else. We didn't really know. And we wanted to know, is there one main reason for lurking, or a variety of different reasons? And importantly, what might shift somebody from being a lurker into being more active? And this, I think, is important, not just for our little community, but this is important for us as educators, to understand why our students lurk and how we might unlurk them. So, we started with research questions. How do lurkers perceive lurking? How does a lurker define contribution? Do lurkers feel part of the community? Why do people lurk? What might persuade them to join in? And is lurking a lesser experience than participating, or just a different one? We didn't want to be elitist about us active people who shout all the time. We did say maybe lurkers just get a different experience, but one that's equally as valid. So, theoretical frameworks, we used 2. We used Levenwenger's community of practice. AK is at the university where Levenwenger are, so that sort of made sense. And Aris used Pareto's law, which is the 80-20 rule, which is that 20% of the inputs account for 80% of the outputs. So 20% of the people are doing most of the stuff. Our methodology, mixed methodology, first quantitative, then qualitative. So Aris downloaded all of the tweets to NodeXL, and we looked at NodeXL and we worked out who was very active and who was lurkers, who we were going to contact. We tweeted a link at the beginning of the course to a Google form. Didn't tell people why we were doing this, we just said fill out our survey. 21 people filled out the survey. We actually excluded 4 of these because they were active learners, they weren't lurkers. So we found 17 lurkers right at the beginning. We then sent them a follow-up questionnaire and asked them further questions to try and understand why they had lurked, if they thought they'd lurked. So, we had 200 course participants in total, 24 active learners, 96 lurkers, and we captured data from 17 of those, which is actually not bad. It's really hard to get data. Another of Aris's things. So 20% of the participants, 24 of the participants were active, 80% were non-active. And here they are. The blue ones are the very, very active people, the 20%. The greens, these are people who were mentioned in a tweet rather than people who had tweeted themselves, so we discluded these. We didn't think they were lurkers, we thought these were no-shows. The red are the potential lurkers, and the black ones are the lurkers that we actually identified. These are the ones that put their hand up and said, hi, I've been lurking, I filled out your form. Okay, so what we found. Lurking, it's silent or invisible engagement, passive involvement. Our lurkers said that they felt that they were part of the community. They felt that they were passively participating. It's Laban Wenger's legitimate peripheral participation. So they felt they were on the periphery, but importantly, they felt part of the community. They said that lurking was a type of action. They said it was potential to become visible. They weren't just sitting there doing nothing. They might join in. Indeed, some of them did join in. And they said what would have made them join in was if we had piqued their interest. We're all very, very busy people, but we find time to do things when we want to. There's a fantastic blog post by James Clay. James talks about why he doesn't have a dog. James doesn't have time to have a dog, but he sees that other people have dogs. Obviously, they have time to have a dog. So we only have a certain amount of time, and we need to be interested enough to join in. I'm an incredibly busy person, and I will join into things if people persuade me. And I think we're all like that. So here's what one of the participants defined lurking as. Being involved in a passive way, following the ongoing conversation and sharing it without commenting, expressing opinions and actively engaging in the conversation. Basically just what I did. So this is somebody who lurked. We didn't know they were there until we asked them, but they felt that they were part of the community. Here's another one, talking about what their experience of the course was. They said it depends on the authenticity of your limited interactions with members. Certainly you still learn a lot from conversations, from exploring what others share in their blogs and from their creativity. I'm happy to appreciate what others create and to add people to my networks. So again, somebody who's not actually taking part themselves, but they feel part of the community. And the last one, lurking is a great way to learn. Not sure how I feel about this, because we all say that we don't really learn by consuming, we're active learners, but here's somebody who says, okay, they're just consuming, but they are still learning. So, here we are, the findings. Lurkers feel part of the community. A lot of them said technology played a big role in their level of participation. Some of them didn't engage because they had limited bandwidth. There are issues there. Some lurkers have internalised negative feelings about lurking. I think lurking is a bad thing to do. We didn't think that lurking was bad. We're neutral about that. What we think is that attitudes and views from traditional classrooms carry over into the open online learning spaces. So in a classroom, if you're just sort of sitting there not participating, very often we call people freeloaders. And very often lurking can be seen as a strategy for dealing with competing priorities. Quite a few of the people who lurked said they didn't mean to lurk, they wanted to join in, but they just physically did not have the time, and they would come back later. So lurking's complex. The main findings that we found, everybody says they didn't have time to participate, but what they mean by not having time varied from person to person. What we found was that if we reached out to the lurkers, which we did, if we knew the lurkers, we saw them there lurking, if we reached out, we could encourage them to join in. Basically, we are a small community, and we're a community of friends. Another thing, they wouldn't join in is they didn't have the resources. If they don't have the bandwidth, so some of our friends are from Guyana, from Egypt, if they can't join in, sometimes they might not be able to get access to the technology. While we were actually doing this research, we normally back channel on Twitter a lot, and while we were doing this, ours suddenly went very, very quiet, and it's because Turkey had tried to lock down Twitter. So you need to understand sometimes if people don't join, it's because they don't have the technology. And sometimes it's just a lack of interest. We had one person who was very, very active at the beginning of the course, and then she dropped out. We asked her why, and she just said, look, I really liked it last year. I don't like it this year. It's not for me. I'll come back next year and see. You know, I'll keep watching, I'll keep lurking, but I'm just not totally interested in what you're doing. My head's somewhere different. And a lot of the people who defined themselves as lurkers said what they were doing was they were sitting, waiting, they were trying to get to know the community. I think it's what you were saying earlier about a lot of students lurk and they'll join in later. Yeah. So I think it's really, really important to define lurking as something that's positive, not something that's negative. You can sit and you can lurk, you can observe the behaviours, you can find out what the protocol are. This community, CL MOOC, when I first came across it, I didn't think it was a community I could be part of, because I looked at it from the outside and I thought this was a community of very, very expert people doing incredibly high-tech stuff with connected learning and doing fantastic stuff with GIMP and with Ziga. And after a while of watching and then just sort of dipping my toe in and talking to a couple of people, I realised actually they were just people like me. It's just once you start to do something, and then other people will help you. And if you look at the sort of stuff I do now, it looks like I can just throw resources out there at the drop of a hat. I can't. It takes me a long, long time to do them. And this is another message that we're getting from this type of community. Where people look very professional and very slick on the outside, they are. But it's all the learning that goes on underneath that's important. And that's what we're trying as a community to share with each other. And now we're realising that what we need to do is share this with our learners as well. So tell them how long it takes to do things. Tell them how long it takes us to do things. Model the behaviour in ourselves that we would like them to be. The other thing Alice wants to do, and Len and I aren't so sure, should we be developing strategy which lure lurkers into the core of the community? Not sure if we want to lure anybody in. This seems like it's a bit sort of underhand to us. I think what we ought to be doing is making communities open so that people who want to join in can join in. But I don't think we should be pressurising people to join in. I think we should be saying if you want to lurk, lurking is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with lurking. Let's reclaim lurking. But if you were, I'm going to throw this open to you now. What strategies do you think we can develop to lure in lurkers? And you know, why do you lurk?
I'm nosy.
Because you're nosy.
Yeah, curious. Just want to know what it
This, I think it's a really interesting area because I think it's an important area to look at. This is one of the things that suddenly shifts in character as soon as we go into the digital. Because technically, most of us are lurking now. And so, you know, by some people's standards, we're all lurkers and we haven't learned anything. If you see what I mean, because we're just consuming, so we're being passive. So what I find really interesting is how, when you're in the same physical space together, all of the rules about lurking fall away for some reason. And yet when we get into the digital, there's this kind of strange default expectation that 100% engagement is a success, and anything less than that's a problem, as if we suddenly all change the way we operate when we go into the digital. So I think there are some odd, I mean obviously you're pushing against those assumptions, but I think there are some odd assumptions about the value of certain forms of participation in the digital that aren't questioned in physical environments, which is important because of the way that we're all geared around this idea of contact time.
Yes.
So by QAA standards, everything that happened, including the active participation, was in contact. Do you see what I mean? So
yes, absolutely.
And there's a real lack of parity that split digital physical in ways that I just don't think are helpful.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's got huge implications for the way we design traditional online courses.
What, any course?
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. There's two things that struck me, because as you were talking, I was just writing questions down for myself, but one of the issues is to do with the actual name. I think one of the biggest problems is actually using the word lurking, because it is more of a pejorative term. So if you actually changed it to something like an observer, that is a completely different position for the learner in terms of tempting them in. I don't have any qualms pedagogically about trying to tempt people in. I don't think that's setting up sort of false expectations. I was interested in your concern about that. Because as someone who deals mainly with working with teachers and people training to go into classrooms at primary, secondary and whatever else, that's one of the things you're trying to do, is engage people with their learning. And I suppose it depends in higher education then, what's the point of your course? What's your criteria? Do you want everyone to participate? Because when I'm face to face with my students, I want them to talk. I find ways to encourage them all to talk. That's what assessment for learning is all about. It's about drawing the learners in.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference, isn't there?
Yeah.
I tutor in philosophy, and part of the tutoring in philosophy is we know that students learn philosophy by talking about it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to lurk, and when I'm doing that, I am encouraging them to speak. And yes, if it's a credit-bearing course or if it's a university course, but the sort of online courses where people are just joining if they want to.
Yeah, I think that's from a philosophical perspective as well. I'd say you've got this whole issue in higher education about an ethical environment, and that applies online and in there. So within the ethical environment, does everyone share the same goals in terms of ethics and participation? Those links to it.
Yeah.
So I've got hundreds of questions here. Talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we wondered about liking, favouriting, whatever, retweeting. We wondered, and the people we asked, our lurkers, didn't think that just liking something was enough just to be lurking. I thought it was. How else do you show you're lurking? But
that's the beauty. As soon as they look at it, they've participated, and these platforms track their looking at it.
Yeah.
So we don't know if it's gone in. We don't know if they've done anything about it. But we do know that they've done some form of participating, even if it's to ignore it and think that's rubbish. It's still participation.
Yes, and what it showed us actually is that there's levels of lurking. There's not one person who's a lurker and one who's not. I lurk in some communities and I'm active in others.
Yeah.
And there's some days I'm lurking, some other days I'm not. And there's different types of lurking.
Yeah. Or observe it.
I think comparing it to the physical space is really, really helpful. And actually, I think we need to be very careful about the assumptions or simplifications that we make. There's a suggestion that lurkers aren't thinking because from our teacher point of view, we can't see evidence of the thinking happening. That's a very teacher-centred problem. And actually, there's no one in this room, is my guess, that isn't learning or engaged very deeply, actually. Liking is just a little expression, like a heads up. Yeah, I've noticed this, just in case you're wondering. And I think we just need to get things back into perspective. People, usually in a room like this or in a space like that, are there for a reason. And I think they're learning.
Yes. Yeah, and we're so socially constructivist, aren't we, sometimes, that we think if people aren't actually actively shouting about doing something, they're not actually doing something. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so, I guess you talked about wanting to reclaim lurking and make it a positive thing, but I was wondering, isn't the normativity of lurking conditional on the context? So if your course is, if the main driver of your course is some online element, then you're going to start running into the free rider problems with perhaps other participants thinking that essentially they're doing all the work. Whereas if it's a kind of bonus or optional extra, then lurking becomes less problematic.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So I think for me, both in physical and digital, that lurking and whether I'm going to lurk and stuff can sometimes depend on the amount of people. Like if there's just a few of you, I don't know, 50 of you, I might be more likely to speak. Whereas if you're in a larger environment, that I might not want to speak. One, because there's more people to potentially tell me I'm wrong or something like that, so there's a confidence issue. And also because at a certain point it's like, well, surely we can't all speak. You can't have 500 people all speaking at the same time because you're going to get less value out of what everybody's saying. So I might consider that what I'm going to say probably isn't as valuable as somebody else. So I don't want to add to. I want to just be creating noise. I want to make sure that there's valuable content for other people as well. And if I think what I'm saying might not add more than what someone else is going to say, there might not be any point in saying it. So I think that the number of people the number of voices.
Yeah,
might
sure.
impact
Sure.
some people.
This is going to have real implications if you have big courses. So if, one of my hats is I'm a Future Learn representative, and what Future Learn is starting to do with exactly this is they're starting to put groups so that people like you who think you're not adding value can have a quieter place to add value.
I think it's interesting listening to the discussion because I wonder whether it's less about whether you call people lurkers or not and how you use this word community. And if you've got people who are observing, actually they're no different to somebody who buys a newspaper and chooses what they want to read. And some people will do the Sudoku, and some people will do the crossword, and you could say that they're therefore more engaged with that newspaper. But maybe it's the buzzword is we're trying to create a community of learners, and in actual fact that isn't what anybody's doing. We're just sharing knowledge and information. Some people will read that and some people will take it deeper. And maybe it's that obsession with community that is leading to these weird definitions coming out of whether people work or not.
I've always thought lurkers was lurking and doing nothing. I'm beginning to wonder about the definition, because I've been in MOOCs where I've done nothing and I've regarded myself as a lurker. And I've been in MOOCs where I've posted all the time, but nobody's ever replied to me. I've no evidence that anybody's reading it. So in what way is that any better than me reflecting on my own, as long as I am reflecting? So what do we call it? Active participation?
Good point. What do we call active participation? Yeah.
Although I would say that actually even formulating a question kind of articulates in your own mind where you're at. So even just posing a question that, you know, even if it sort of falls into an empty forest or whatever, you know, I think that still is one, you know, one more part of the engagement.
You could do that in your own reflective blog or learning
Yeah,
journal.
but do you not think that you think about it a little bit more? I suppose if you're putting that publicly, then that's...
I guess it's more disheartening though, isn't it? If you put it out there and nobody engages with you, it almost sets you even further back than not putting out something out there in the first place. Yeah. It's that thing where we all deal in sort of we take negative feedback sort of more personally. So if you put something on a MOOC and nobody engages with it, you almost feel a step behind where you were when you were just observing what everybody else was
doing. Especially if you've responded to somebody else and they just never come back and look at it again.
So that's almost more negative.
There's no active participation, really.
Yeah. So what Andrew's telling me to stop now, but what it's telling us is we need to do more to look at the types of lurking and also to think about what we call it. And I'll stop there.
Excellent. Well done.
Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you.